It's not true. I'm a DC guy. Everybody knows that. Welcome to the 21st Annual Doug Wright Awards. Sorry, this is really awkward. But everybody can hear me okay, right? Yeah. It's like it's okay. Better? Come on! I'm Brad, chair of the Doug Wright Board and co-founder of the Doug Wright Awards. I'd like to welcome you all here tonight. Before I go on, I have to say this. Are there any Americans in the room? I know there's at least one, and I hate to do this, because of the terrorists, you have to clap 75% louder. So please do that. What? You just said last night you can't even hear. You have bad hearing. That's a you problem, not a me problem. So if you haven't been to the awards before, there's kind of a familiar run of things. There's the Pigskin Peters Award, the Best Book Award, the Giant in the North Hall of Fame inductees, Seth heckling me from the front row, which is fitting. More heckling! And the opening monologue, which is traditionally the weakest part of the ceremony. So welcome. Lots of people in attendance: Seth, Howard Shakowitz, Kate Beaton, Don McKellar, Justin Harbin, Janet Hamblin, Chester Brown, who was supposed to be here, and Captain Canuck at the back of the room. Thank you for coming, sir. It's the captain's 50th anniversary, and he looks great in that leotard. I want to know what your secret is. I want to thank everyone who makes the awards possible, from cartoonists, publishers, to distributors, bookstores, comic book shops, and of course, everybody who buys and reads comics. The 21 nominations this year represent a diverse and eclectic survey of the state of Canadian comics at the moment. There are intensely personal memoirs, anthologies of short stories, multi-generational coming-of-age stories, along with modern folk tales, atmospheric horrors, and a satirical takedown of the art world. And now is the point of the evening when I answer all your burning questions, starting with, what are the Doug Wright Awards? So the Doug Wright Awards were founded in 2004 and are a nonprofit foundation committed to supporting and celebrating the best in Canadian comics. The primary way we do this is through our award ceremony, which we've been holding annually for more than 2 decades now. And our goal is to cast the spotlight on Canadian comics and the people who make them. Over 2 decades, we've handed out more than 65, I counted them, Wright Awards trophies to an all-star lineup of the country's best cartoonists, including Emily Carroll, Kate Beaton, Julian Tamaki, Joe Ullman, Mariko Tamaki, Sammy Awani, Mark Bell, David Collier, Hartley Lynn, Michael DeForge, Jesse Jacobs, Fiona Smythe, to name a few. And each year we hand out trophies in 4 categories. Best Book, for Best Book, the Nipper, the Pigskin Peters Award, and the Egghead. To be considered, a book must have been published in the previous calendar year. And this year, we are happy to have received over 200 entries from dozens of publishers and self-published cartoonists. Conan wanted me to point out that a record 3 Nipper nominees are also up for Best Book this year, so I think that's the first time. And this year also sees only the second self-published book ever nominated for the Egghead. As well, the book is also the first nominee in the kids category to have a curse word in the title, so that's something. Each category is judged by a diverse 3-member jury made up of cartoonists, industry experts, or those with a deep knowledge and appreciation of the medium. The books are judged on quality of illustration, writing, and production. In addition to our awards categories, we also take time every year to honor Canadian comics history by inducting a cartoonist or cartoonists on occasion into our Hall of Fame, which we call the Giants of the North. We are very pleased to have 2 inductees this year. The first is Lou Skuse, who was a widely published editorial cartoonist during the first half of the 20th century. You can see some of his art and paraphernalia in the display case out front. We're also very thrilled to induct Richard Cumley, the co-creator, writer, and artist behind the iconic and best-selling Captain Canuck comic book series, which debuted in 1975, which I believe, if I do my math, is 50 years ago. So thanks for coming, Richard. In addition to, there was more about Captain Canuck. I didn't realize you printed and shipped 170,000 issues. Captain Canuck was also the first independent comic book to be printed in full color, which I learned earlier today. As many of you are likely aware, the Wright Awards take their name from master cartoonist Doug Wright, whose comic strip Doug Wright's Family dominated comic strips in the mid-20th century. And as I mentioned off the top, the Wright Awards are a nonprofit, which means we don't receive any funding or grants. So as a result, we couldn't pull the show off every year with our dedicated volunteers and sponsors, which I would like to thank right now. So this year I'd like to thank Ehab Arafa, John Montgomery, Michael Thorner, who was tickling the ivories before, and right over there. I love it when you do that. Matt Finley, Derek Wincheers, Jeff Speed, Maurice Fellacoop for our splendid poster. Thank you. Chris Scriver, Rob Mursky, Rebecca Pasternak, Peter Berkamo, Hope Galdenzy, Miles Baker, Amy Wright, Jade Mills, the Arts and Letters Club, and the judges. A round of applause. I'd also like to thank our sponsors, Coyamba Provides, the Valley View Artist Retreat, Beguiling, Crowdfunder, Strange Adventures, the Arts and Letters Club, the Toronto Comic Arts Festival. So before I wrap up, I just want to say Conan wants everybody to know that we still have copies of the wonderful collected Doug Wright, Canada's Master Cartoonist, 1960 to 1980, which we launched this time last year, on sale at the book table. Also, if you haven't gone there, the Wright Awards have a table with TCAF, booth number 141, where you can buy that book, as well as all of this year's nominated books. And merch. I'm up here hawking merch. We also have a new line of merch, t-shirts, bags, and buttons, which all benefit the Doug Wright Awards. So please go and buy them. And one last note, Bob Sikoriak, our Sikoriak, who is usually sketching for us over here. He's not here, Howard. Respect, Bob is usually live sketching us, which is great, but he can't make it this year. He's finishing up a book that will be available at next year's TCAF. So he promises to return then, which we'll hold him to. And last but not least, the bar is open to last call, which is 1 a.m. Yes, I had 1 p.m. 1 a.m. It's not 1 p.m. I'm done. Now I'm pleased to introduce you to your host for the 21st Annual Award, Doug Wright Awards, a man who I've met before, and I'm very happy that he's here. He is a writer, artist, TV producer from Kittiganzibi and Anishinaabe, creator of the Algonquin superhero comic and animated series Kagagi, and a collaborator with the great Robert Munch. Jay Odjick, come on stage. Have fun, buddy.
Jay Odjick and Dijnakas. Hello, my name is Jay Odjick. Thank you, Brad, for the wonderful introduction. And welcome, ladies, gentlemen, superheroes, as it were, Captain Canuck. So a little bit, I'd like to start by introducing myself a little bit and talking about what comics meant for me as a kid. Brad asked if there were any Americans here. As a half American, I didn't feel right half raising my hand. Before we really begin, as I know we're very close right now, but is anybody here from Rochester, New York? Yeah? I'm sorry, the next couple of minutes might be a little rugged. Has anybody here ever been to Rochester, New York? Okay, I'm sorry. I'm glad you made it out. For those unfamiliar, I'm from Rochester, New York. My dad, like a lot of guys from my reserve, Kittiganzibi, left the community to work in the States because there just wasn't a lot of work back home. My dad ended up and down the East Coast working construction and high steel. Met my mother in Rochester, and that's all I care to know about my origin story. I don't need to know particulars. I know about 9 months after that, I came along, and I was born right up the street from a comic shop there that had the slightly dubious business practice of taking the comics that didn't sell and ripping the cover off and selling them for 5 cents. which as a kid without a lot of money was great. And now I look back on as a guy who makes comics, and I'm like, how could you? But at the time, it was pretty awesome. And they would do this practice of like, they'd bring in special guests. And one of the special guests they brought in at a certain point was Spider-Man. And I was, I think, 5 years old. So for me, this was a big deal. Because you have to understand, for me, even though I'd like to think I was an above average intelligent 5-year-old, I was still a 5-year-old. And when you tell a 5-year-old Spider-Man's gonna be somewhere, he doesn't hear a guy in suit. It's Spider-Man. Apologies, Captain Canuck. I know you're the real deal. I don't mean to cast aspersions. So I'm in line waiting to meet Spider-Man at the store in Rochester with my older brother. I don't know how many people here have an older sibling, but at a certain point, my older brother leans over to me. He's looking at Spider-Man, and he goes, I don't think that's the real Spidey. And I'm offended. I am shocked, befuddled, and offended. And I go, what are you talking about? How could it not be the real Spider-Man? Spidey wouldn't let some charlatan masquerade as him. It has to be the real Spider-Man. And he thinks about it for a minute. My brother's 4 years older than me, so at the time he's 9 or 10. And he's an amazing case because on the one hand, he's way smarter than he has any right to be. On the other, he's an incredibly dumb kid. Apologies to my older brother. And he leans over and he looks at me and he goes, I've got an idea. Now, I don't know for the people here who have an older sibling, when you hear that, it's never good for you. And I go, okay, what's your idea? I'm a naive 5-year-old, and I go, I'll ask him. My brother goes, no. And I go, well, sir, what do you suggest? He says to me, ask to see his web shooters, and when he shows you, I'll go for his mask. Now, what's really interesting about this is he's a smart enough kid to come up with this super villain-esque plan to unmask a superhero. On the other, he's dumb enough to believe that this guy has web shooters. I'm like, realistically, like those don't exist in our world. This guy who's being paid like probably $50 to be Spider-Man for the day surely doesn't have web shooters, but whatever, it doesn't occur to me. I offer him the opportunity to prove he is in fact Spider-Man. As we get closer, he looks at the guy and he goes, see, he's not Spider-Man. And I go, why? And he goes, look, he's all skinny. He doesn't even have muscles. And I go, well, he spends all his time swinging around the city. It's like a high cardio activity. He's burning calories all day. But sure enough, we get up to the guy. And sure enough, I say, hi, Spider-Man. My name is Jay, and you're my hero. It's great to meet you. And he responds to me in this Marge Simpson's sister voice. It's great to meet you, too. And he didn't sound like Peter Parker, and that kind of threw me off. And I said, can I see your web shooters? This guy had nothing. He went, and when he did that, my brother got the mask about halfway up his face, and we got thrown out of the comic book shop. And luckily, nothing like that happened to me at TCAF today because I left my brother at home. I had a great day. So I learned to read with comic books. And when I was a kid, and I'd like to think older than I look, there wasn't this dearth of superhero movies and TV shows and things that we have today. The only show that was on TV that had superheroes that I remember as a little kid was a show called The Super Friends. Is everybody here familiar with The Super Friends? Let's not get too excited. There he is. So the thing about the Super Friends, it's basically, for those unfamiliar, it's basically DC Comics Justice League, but I guess they thought that name was too rowdy for kids, so they called them the Super Friends. So it's like all of the A-list DC Comics characters. Superman, Green Lantern, Batman, Robin, because every day was take your kid to work day for Batman. I don't know why. And Wonder Woman. So there's only one female, and it was like a predominantly white sausage party up in this piece. And at some point, they realized like all our superhero characters are white. We need to diversify our lineup a little bit. And they went about this in the absolute greatest way possible. Just kidding. A bunch of white networks executives came up with a bunch of characters. So they were like racially diverse crew of an African-American hero named Black Vulcan. And I never understood why, whenever there's an African American character, he has to have the word black in his name. My man, Black Lightning, Black Panther, Black Manta, Black Vulcan. And then, I always wondered because as a kid, I'd be like, the Joker's here. We're all in grave danger. It's okay. No one ever says, it's fine. White Batman's here to save us. He just gets to be Batman. But whenever it's like Marvel has a Red Wolf, the native hero, or we have the black characters with black in their name, and then there was the Asian American superhero, I believe it was Japanese, named Shogun or Samurai or something, super creative. And then we had my guy, my hero to look up to, Apache Chief. Now, if you're unfamiliar with Apache Chief, I'm sorry I'm about to ruin that and take that from you and scar you for life. But Apache Chief, the thing about him is, I'm real dubious as to whether or not he's an Apache or a chief. I've met some Apache. They say they've never heard of this Joker, let alone elected him. And that's his costume. Essentially, he's wearing like buckskin in bright orange. I don't know why the leather is that color. So he has like a leather vest, some little booties, a headband, some John Cena wristbands, and a loincloth. So I don't really understand how it worked because, like, for the other heroes, Batman got a really cool costume, little bat ears, a cool ass cape, and my man didn't even get pants. And I used to say, like, at the end of the day, like, we're all comic fans here, I know. I'm probably lean more toward the superhero aesthetic than most people. But, like, everybody knows what is Superman's weakness? Kryptonite. My man's weakness was a strong breeze. Think about that. And unlike Superman, who had what? How many powers does Superman have? He's got like 50,000. He can fly, he's super strong, he can see through your clothes, which isn't creepy at all. He has super breath, which I assume means he never needs a Tic Tac. No matter if he flies at Mach 5, his hair never gets messed up, which I'm super jealous of. And then if you've ever seen the Christopher Reeve 1979 movie, he debuts a new power net I'd never seen before. For those of you unfamiliar, at the end of the Superman 1979 movie, Lois Lane dies. There's like a rock slide or avalanche, hits her car, kills her. Superman shows up. At this point, he looks to be like in his 30s, super mature, reasonable man, falls to his knees, screams, no! And then I don't know why they do this. The camera has him fly away from the planet, even though he's on the ground touching it. He flies away from the planet. He loops back around, whereupon he grabs the planet again and spins it backward, thus rewinding time. Now, I'm far from a scientist. I don't think that's how it works. I tend to believe if you spun the planet backwards like that, it would pivot off its axis and we'd fly into the sun and we'd all die. Thank you, Superman. Good job. In the movie, it rewinds time to a time when Lois is still alive. I don't even know what to call that power. That's just super plot convenience. So Superman has 50,000 powers. My guy had one. Does anybody know what Apache Chief's power was, apart from being radically offensive? He grew in size. And what he did was he said, and I quote, a magic Indian word. And when he said this magic Indian word, he grew to 50 feet tall. They never said he became 50 feet tall and bulletproof. They never said 50 feet tall and super strong. He just got real tall. And here's the reason why I say not only do I not believe Apache Chief is Apache or a chief, the magic Indian word he would say to get 50 feet tall, Inukshuk. So I don't know how that worked because Google didn't exist back then, but some network executive was like, sounds Indian enough, let's do it. So that was my representation of superheroes as a kid until we moved to Canada. We moved to Canada when I was about 6 years old, and I came across a comic book that we'll talk about a little bit more that had a different representation of a First Nations character. Comics for me were not just a way that, for me, I learned to read. It captivated my imagination in a way because we moved from being in the city in Rochester to coming to a reserve where in Quebec there was no books in English. We caught the CBC, and that was it. So as a little kid, unless you were real into political commentary with guys with British accents, you were kind of shit out of luck. I feel like I can say shit because it's in one of the titles of one of the books, so I think I'm okay. Like no one's gonna kick me off stage. Um, and yeah, comics I think are an amazing thing because at the end of the day, I've never seen anything that can bring so many different groups and types of people together as comics. And I'm really pleased and honored to be here today, celebrating comics with a bunch of people who love it as well. And I think we're all going to have a great time. So with that said, I think it's enough of me running my mouth and screwing around. I think we better get to handing out some awards. What do you guys say? Yes. So with that, let's kick off officially the 2025 Doug Wright Awards. For the winners, please come up to, I want to show you guys something before I really get underway with this. I don't know if you can see this, if your eyesight is good or not. Can you read what that says? It says large type. So when Conan asked me for the script, you want me to use a large font? And I said, no, I want you to use a really large font. Like, I need reading glasses. I'm blind. And he goes, how big? I said, imagine I'm your grandma reading the script and 2 sizes bigger than that. So I can actually read this without my reading glasses. Thank you. So yeah, winners, please come up to the stage to give your speech. Seth will come up to present you with your award on the floor in front of the stage as you return to your seat. Your photo also will be taken as you're handed your prize. With that said, it's time for our first award of the night, which will be none other than the Egghead, the Doug Wright Award for Best Kids Book, which recognizes the year's best book aimed at young readers. The award takes its name from Doug Wright's original unused name for his signature character, Nipper. The winner of the Egghead receives a trophy and a small cash prize. To present this year's Egghead, please welcome the artist Fiona Smythe, co-winner of the 2023 Egghead and a 2019 Giants of the North inductee.
Hello. Thank you so much, Jay. All right, I'm just going to get right to it. The nominees for the 2025 Egghead Award are The New Girl by Cassandra Callan, published by Graphic/Scholastic. The Rat Pack by Stephanie Cook and Whitney Gardner, published by Simon & Schuster Books for Young Readers. Lost at Windy River, A True Story of Survival by Trina Rathgeber, Alina, Pete, and Jillian Dolan, published by Orca Book Publishers. The Shit Witch by Lise Shu, self-published. And last but not least, Alterations by Ray Shu, published by Union Square Kids. And the winner is, the Egghead goes to Lost at Windy River, A True Story of Survival by Trina Rathgeber and Alina, Pete, and Jillian Dolan, published by Orca Book Publishers. Congratulations to the winners and all the nominees.
All right, thank you, Fiona. Each year, the Doug Wright Awards inducts a new member or 2 into the Giants of the North, the Canadian Cartooning Hall of Fame. This year, one of our inductees is no longer with us, and one happily is here with us tonight. To induct this year's first giant, the cartoonist Lou Scoose, please welcome Conan Tobias, the executive director of the Doug. I'm from the res, yo. Give me a break with them names, okay? I'm trying. Please welcome Conan Tobias, the executive director of the Doug Wright Awards and Canada's foremost and only Lou Scholar.
Thanks, Jay. Well, I'm really excited about this one, and I will tell you why. We go to the next slide here. So about, oh, no, not the film yet. About 20 years ago, a friend of mine dropped me a line and said, I've got something I think you'd like to see. If we can go to the next slide, Matt. And it was this. It was a copy of Corcoran's Wrestling Guide. Now, Jack Corcoran was a local wrestling promoter here in town back in the glory days of regional wrestling circuits. And this was a guide to all the wrestlers in his club. Go to the next one, Matt. And it had every one of the wrestlers had a page like this. And my friend was right. I was really taken by with the way that this guy was able to draw really realistically and really cartoonish, equally well. And he was a great letterer. And I was just really intrigued by who this person was. And you can see at the bottom there, it said Loose Goose. And that's Louskuce. And that is his real name. And there wasn't much out there on him at the time. I Googled him, and he was basically, there were basically two facts online about him. So I'll go to the next one, Matt. He was known for touring with something he called his cartoonograph, which was essentially an overhead projector, as you see here. And he would tour exhibitions and fairs, and he toured the U.S., theaters in the U.S. at one point. And it was basically just, it was a little stage show that he did where he would sit on stage and draw on the overhead projector, and you'd see it projected up at the top. And he would banter and do all kinds of neat little things like that too. And his trick was he could draw something like a ship, and then he turned it upside down and scratched 3 more lines on, and it would turn it into Hitler's face. And people loved this. This was in the days before television, of course, and it was widely popular with it. And the other thing I found was he was known as Canada's greatest cartoonist. So I wondered how this person who had been so famous and had a name like Canada's greatest cartoonist had been completely forgotten. So I spent about a decade researching his life. There wasn't a lot out there at any one place. I should mention he was a member of the Arts and Letters Club briefly for a year. So it's nice to be doing this here. So I'm just going to breeze through his life quickly and let the visuals speak as much as possible. What I found was a pretty interesting life of a talented and beloved guy. Thomas Louis Goose was born on July 6, 1886 in Ottawa. His father was a blacksmith, and Lou learned the trade with him in his late teens and young adulthood. And he had a lot of varied interests as a youth. You can go to the next one, Matt. I don't know if anybody here knows a cartoonist, but they're not generally known for their athleticism, unless they're Steve Manali, maybe. Lou and his brothers were very active members of the Britannia Boathouse Club in Ottawa. They paddled something called the War Canoe, which is a 15-man boat that's paddled for either half a mile or a mile. They won several championships. Just seeing the next one here, there's Lou and one of his brothers with all their medals. Lou played rugby for a year with the original Ottawa Rough Riders, and after moving to Toronto, the Parkdale Canoe Club. This is in the days before the CFL. Played at least one season of amateur hockey in Winnipeg. He played drum in a military bugle band. He was the head usher at Bennett's Theatre in Ottawa. It was just a really wide variety of interests, but art was always a big deal for him, and one of his first jobs was drawing hand-lettered advertisements for window displays in Ottawa. He eventually found work at a number of local papers before getting a job at the Toronto Sunday World, which you'll see here. This is just one of his front pages here. The World was a really interesting paper. In Canada, our big weekend read is on Saturday, and in the U.S., it's on Sunday. And Canadian papers at the time were very conservative, the Star and the Globe. The World was much more in the American style of a weekend paper. It was very sensational and probably more fun. And Lou's sense of humor really helped him there a lot, and he made his career at the World as a result. He drew cartoons for every section. I think we have a few there, Matt. He only ever had one character in that time called Mr. Fan. You can see him in the middle there. This is a full-page Mr. Fan cartoon. Mr. Fan was just an everyman kind of character that showed up all over the paper, mostly in the sports pages. Because of Lou's background in sports, he really focused on sports illustration. He drew cartoons that were fun and frenetic and had a sense of humor, and he became a household name. That page we saw a minute ago was actually one of the first full-color newspaper pages in Canada. I think there's a couple more of his World illustrations. This is early stuff, but he did a wide variety of things. You can go to the next one, Matt. There's another, that's a later Mr. Fan page. In 1913, he was big enough for the World to publish a book of his sports cartoons, which I think is on the next slide, that you could send away for, I think for 20 cents or something at the paper, and they would send you this little book of baseball cartoons. By the 20s, he was in high demand. He was appearing in Maclean's and the Canadian and the Goblin. And he said he always planned to leave cartooning behind and start a career in fine art. And in the early 20s, he packed up and moved to New York to try to do that. I don't really know exactly what went down in New York, but he did not become a fine artist. Although he did do fine art, and we'll see in the next couple slides here, just a couple samples of his fine art. I think that's his mother. And there's a landscape there. But it did not become his career. He mainly continued to do newspaper advertisements. He apparently worked in animation, although I didn't find anything that he'd done. He did get 2 strips syndicated. See in the next couple slides. One was called Cash and Carry. One was called Marianne Gay. They were pretty generic flapper strips of the day. I think they each lasted about a year. It just didn't happen for him. You can go to the next one, Matt. Yeah, they were actually also really identical. You can tell from that those 2 strips are years apart, but they look exactly the same. It was around this time he developed his signature character. See the next one, which is called Loose Goose, which one magazine called an unavoidable accident because of his name. So this was the character that stayed with him for the rest of his life. It was his signature. It appeared in his work. He would sometimes just sit there. Sometimes he'd do wisecrack jokes in the work. There's one more. This is a later one he did for the artist Ting with the Ting worm. By 1929, he's back in Toronto working for the Mail, which bragged about repatriating him. And he started appearing in testimonials at that time for cars and cigarettes. And if you think about that today, a newspaper cartoonist appearing in a Ford ad, that's unheard of. But it wasn't quite as unheard of back then, but it just shows how big a name he had become in newspapers. He was welcomed back in Canada. You can go to the next one, Matt. Newspaper work wasn't what it had been before he left. So he supplemented his work with advertising work, which he'd always done. But at this point, he set up Loose Goose Studios in Toronto here, and he just churned out print ads and promotional blotters and coasters. You can scroll through the next few there, Matt. He just had an incredible number of clients: Firestone, Hudson's Bay, General Electric, Imperial Tobacco, O'Keefe's Brewing, General Motors, Spalding, CCM, Lipton, Imperial Oil, the Shriners, a lot of local advertising. There's some coasters. There's a blotter for CCM. I think the next one is a Lipton ad that he did. He did a variety of merchandise too. You could, if you went into Tamblin's drugstore, you could get a jigsaw puzzle for $0.25 if you bought a tube of toothpaste. I think we have one of those. There's one of those puzzles there. He did the covers of Hilroy notebooks. I think we have one of those there too. Sports remained a big part of his career. Throughout his whole life, he did a lot of work for the Maple Leafs. He's one of the Maple Leaf Gardens program covers with King Clancy, right where TCAF is this week. If anyone knows who Loose Goose still is, it is ironically coaster collectors. There is a series of coasters that he did in 1932 of the Toronto Maple Leafs, the entire team, and they sell for hundreds, if not thousands of dollars sometimes. And those are the only people that know anything about Loose Goose still. Or this very niche group of coaster collectors. His drawings once aligned to the original Maple Leaf Gardens before the renovation, and at least one restaurant in town. He was married twice and had 4 children. It's one of their Christmas cards. His family history is just a whole story in itself. I'm not going to go into it because it's really interesting. But again, we'd be here forever. He spent a lot of time in the war effort, even though he didn't serve. He did safety posters for the munitions plant here in Scarborough. Worked on the HMCS Middlesex. That's him drawing their mascot on the side. I think we have their patch on the next one. He did Victory Bond ads. Yeah, he wasn't a member of the Canadian Whites, which, for those who don't know, are the group of cartoonists that produced comics in Canada during the Second World War. But he did appear in some of the issues. A lot of it was recycled stuff. There's a cover that he did for Joe Comics #2. And as I mentioned, he was really known for a stage show, especially during the war. And at that point, he sort of added his daughters in, and they did a whole little vaudeville act. They would tap dance and all kinds of things. His masterpiece, as far as I'm concerned, is his mural for the Toronto Press Club, which no longer is around. But when I say mural, it was on the walls, it was on the ceilings, it was on the floor, it was on the doors. It was a pretty incredible mural. I wish there was more of it. I do have one thing just before we wrap up. I have a 1 minute newsreel that was produced. It's the only film I found of Loose Goose, and it's pretty neat. If we can just play that quickly, Matt. This is Lou finishing up the mural at the press club, and we'll see the opening of it as well. That's him there, and you'll see him kind of joke around a bit. There's Mr. Fan on the wall. Yeah, just a little bit of comical. This is the opening. That's Barbara Ann Scott, the Canadian Olympian. I managed to talk to her before she died about it. I asked her what she remembered of this night, and she said just being surrounded by men. He seems like a lovely man. There's the opening. This is a who's who of newspaper people from the day, and you can just see it would be amazing to see it today. I wish it was still around, but it is not. That's the Governor General, I believe. It's really great. Yeah, oh, there's a great shot of it. It's everywhere. So sadly, Lou died 9 months after that on November 20th, 1951 of a heart condition. Unfortunately, not much of his work is left, certainly not that's easily accessible to the public. But he was a talented and beloved Canadian, and I'm happy I was able to get his name out there more. I wrote a really long piece about it. It's online if you want to learn more about him. Maybe we'll put it on our social. But I'm even happier to be inducting him into the Hall of Fame tonight, and I'd like to welcome up his granddaughter, Heather Christensen, to accept the award.
Thanks, Conan. Growing up, my mom, Sandra, did tell us stories about her dad, and we saw some pictures. But honestly, I think I learned as much as almost anybody else through Conan's research. He put a lot of work and care into this, and it's really wonderful. And my mom would be just so thrilled to know that her dad got this recognition. So thank you again, Conan. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Heather. Thank you, Conan. I don't know about if I can speak for any of the other cartoonists or artists in here are experiencing feelings of inadequacy after watching that. Like, well, what do you do for a living? Well, I'm a professional cartoonist. I also play professional rugby and professional hockey, and I'm also a professional wrestler. And like, okay, I'm gonna go lay down in bed for 3 days. That's really, really cool. Our next award this evening is the Pigskin Peters, the Doug Wright Award for Best Small or Micro Press Book. This award, given to a book not published by a major press, is named for a popular character in the comic strip Bird's Eye Center, also known as Juniper Junction, drawn by Doug Wright from 1948 to 1968. Seth recently compiled a collection of Doug Wright's Juniper Junction strips, which will be published next year by New York Review Comics and will feature an introduction by Brad. The winner of the Pigskin Peters receives a black bowler hat, which you can see up here on the stage, similar to the one worn by the award's namesake, and a small cash prize. Here to present the 2025 Pigskin Peters Award is the cartoonist Dustin Harbin, a man who has hosted these awards multiple times since, as an American, it's one of the only ways he can appear on the Doug Wright stage. Ladies and gentlemen, Dustin Harbin.
What is this, an anti-beer establishment? Thank you so much, Jay. Barbarians. Like Jay, I am half American. What? What's wrong?
Last year when Dustin was hosting, he made a really a humorous comment about how many years he'd hosted the awards and where's my Doug Wright jacket. So this year,
What? Oh.
yeah, he didn't read his contract. It's not enough years to get a jacket, but we got a vest for him. Oh, there we go. Now let's see if it fits. If it's too big, let's see. Hey, that's not bad. That's not bad. Yeah. And one other thing before he talks. Since I'm up here,
Jesus.
we have someone who has been here long enough to get a jacket. Is Ehab.
Yeah.
Because Ehab's been here since the very first day, our first volunteer, and for many years, the only person who cared. And he's been wonderful help and loyal, and we love him for it. So thank you, Ehab. Yeah.
That's very nice. Well, I am tickled pink. I was going to say something funny too. I was joking with Marta earlier about how I definitely won't cry tonight since I'm only presenting. I don't even have to say anything at all. I mean, I'm not going to cry because that would be unmanly and foolish. That's really sweet. I really appreciate that. As everyone here probably knows, I'm really fond of this award and the people that run it and Canadian comics, period. So it's very pleasant to be part of this community. And having said that, the nominees for the for the 2025 Pigskin Peters Award are Customer Service by Patrick Allaby, self-published. The Same Water by Richard Fairgray, published by Richard Such. The Cosmic Con by Ron Kasman, published by At Bay Press. The Slenderest of Leashes 1 by Xiao Xiao Li, self-published. And Be Yourself, Oh, Not Like That, by Amelia Stolchuk, self-published. It's very nice. And I'm a 50-year-old person, so red vest is, I'm basically got a job at Target now. Just welcoming people. The winner of the Pigskin Peters Award is Customer Service by Patrick Allaby.
thank you so much to the Doug Wright Awards. I was really hoping to lose a second time and get in the running for the biggest loser here. But that I guess hasn't happened. I'm really trying to sell it of the first print run of this. I've got like 6 copies left, so please come and buy one tomorrow. I want to light in my suitcase. And I nearly had to pay overweight fees, so that really sucked. And I want to thank, this is funded by Arts NB, Koyama Provides. And I started this project in a very different form when I was at the University of Waterloo, so I want to thank everyone who was with me there. And yeah, this is a book about advocating for universal pharmacare, which has started to be a reality, but it's still so far from ever like actualizing in Canada. So maybe pressure your local MPs to expand it and actually sign deals if you live in provinces you haven't. And also, if you're writing them, just write them to begging them not to build pipelines and to maybe put sanctions on Israel, because it's a really sickening time to live in Canada. And yeah, I want to thank you all. Have a great day.
Thank you, Patrick, and congratulations. It's always sad when we lose a member of the cartooning community. Last September, we said goodbye to Bernie Moreau, the Canadian comic book writer and artist. Here to pay tribute to Bernie is Howard Chakowitz, a Montreal-based cartoonist and best friend to Bernie. Welcome, Howard.
Hey, everybody. This is like not the most uplifting part of the evening, obviously. I'm sorry about that. And Joe Ullman got me drunk with a double bourbon, so double espresso. And I don't drink, so I'll be extra weepy. Yeah, a little difficult for me to do this. Bernie was my best friend, my main art partner. I'm wearing his shirt here, The Jam. You guys all know The Jam? I can't think of a better place to ask this. I've been asking people, these are like for reading glasses. When I look at you, you're all blurry, or maybe it's the booze. I think Bernie was like the first person to ever create a superhero without powers, actually having power. I don't consider Batman, even early Batman, not having powers. And I think the spirit, like Will Eisner's a spirit, I mean, he kind of came from the dead and stuff. So am I right in that? Is like, does anyone know of, before The Jam, of a superhero without powers? I'm a very informal guy, as you can see, so just yell it out if you want to, heckle me if you want to. But is Flaming Carrot, like, so is that earlier than The Jam? But isn't he a carrot? Isn't he actually like a... Okay. Because, Bernie's character was just a regular old guy, right? He didn't even know he was doing stuff. So I find that an amazing kind of like historical thing. So I want to thank TCAF and the Doug Wright Awards and all those people for thinking of Bernie. Can you all hear me okay? I talk really loud anyway, so. I had a lot of people saying stuff to me about what I should say about Bernie. To be honest, like I said, Bernie was my best buddy, and he was my art partner, and we did so much stuff together. But I knew The Jam very well, but I didn't really know Grendel and all that stuff very well. And people really talk about Grendel, but I kind of feel like I don't really know it that well. But I know for people who love Grendel, Bernie was really important, and he was kind of an artist that was all over the place, kind of more than most. From his own, he was an auteur, his own stuff. He worked for all the major publications. He worked for everybody. He did coloring and inking and drawing, and it's an incredible, wide-ranging career. So I want to thank Doug Wright Awards for thinking of Bernie. I want to give a shout out to his family, his sisters Michelle, Denise, and Renee, his sons Eli and Isaac, and their mom Kathy. Their certain people like close friends Jesse Bachner, Mark Lang. Eli Schwab has Cosmic Line. He's a publisher and an artist in the States, and he just loves Bernie so much. And he has like a Grendel tattoo and all that kind of stuff. And so he's always done so much for Bernie. If you look up Cosmic Lion, if you look up Eli Schwab, Cosmic Line, he did a beautiful tribute book to Bernie's art that is just gorgeous. There's still copies available. It's not for profit. Any money that comes in that's extra, it goes to the Comic Book Legal Defense Fund, which is a great thing. And yeah, there was someone else I wanted to make sure I didn't forget. There's a guy, Jean-Dominique Leduc, who's who's a who writes a lot about comics, and he's a comic writer. He really loved Bernie. They're just people who, after Bernie's death, did so much stuff. A guy, Jean Marquis, at the Boîte à BD, it's a comic store in Montreal, who loves Bernie and really supported him and promoted him all the time. And if you guys look, the Comics Journal did a 23-page article on Bernie after he died by a guy named Zach Raberoff, and did a really great job. So if I forgot anybody, my apologies. I want there's a bit of sad stuff. So again, I'm sorry, but I just don't want to kind of gloss over stuff. So unfortunately, last September, Bernie killed himself. I'm going to just kind of talk about a couple of things. I'm just going to kind of keep it around 5 minutes, but Bernie had 2 terrible types of cancer. He had leukemia, which he battled for years. I had my second cancer in 2009, and then Bernie got it like really soon after. So we're kind of like cancer buddies too. And he kind of had that in check, ended up getting bladder cancer too. And we suspect that, and the reason I'm saying this now is because I'm just going to come back to something later, because just some things that have been said about Bernie since his passing, people kind of like theorizing why and this and that. I just want to make it very clear from his suicide note, and obviously knowing him so well, the cancers were very aggressive. Bladder cancer, it's probably a very good chance that he got some bad news before it all happened. So I think that's what it all happened. He was also really poor. He didn't make a lot of money from comics. He should have. I shouldn't be up here. I think Bernie should be up here, like receiving like a Lifetime Achievement Award or something. But and when he got separated from his partner, he went to go take care of his dad in Rodin, Quebec, which is a small town. I think he would have loved to have been in Montreal with all of us and continuing to work and doing stuff. So I think he was kind of alone and sick and broke. And so I'm just saying that now because I'm just going to come back to something in about a minute. I just want to just keep that in mind. So that's why Bernie killed himself, just to make it very clear. After an artist dies, especially someone who's maybe under-recognized or underappreciated, there's all this stuff that comes, right? And when I wrote about Bernie, I didn't know what to do. His family asked me to write something online, and I did. So I kind of was very blunt that this is what happened. And so everybody who's ever read it saw I explained everything that was going on. And I said, after, an artist dies, all this attention comes in any field. And sure enough, after Bernie died, flooded. We want to do a TV show about the Jam. We want to do a TV series. We want to publish it in this language and that language. So it's great. But it would have been better if it happened when Bernie was alive and his main son, Isaac, I don't mean his main son, I mean the son who's like trying to do stuff with his art and everything. They're mourning, so it's hard. So I don't know what's going to happen after, but I'm doing this for Bernie to mention, if we can all also remember the incredible artist Henriette Valium, another incredible artist in Montreal. We're all friends, a very nice community in Montreal. We're a very close community in a lot of ways. And that's another person who deserved the greatest. And after Valium died, everyone's like, oh my God, what a genius. So let's all remember, every city in the world, there are unrecognized, underrepresented artists. I'm talking about comics here because we're comic people here. So let's all remember those people who are here and alive and doing well, and maybe we can move forward and kind of not forget the important people in our comics community. Just want to say that. But yeah, he was also my bandmate, and he helped me more times than I can even count. He was such a great community member. Anyone that's in the Montreal comics community, Bernie was so inclusive and kind and generous and helpful. He had a true spirit of art, art and music. He was an art music warrior. And I think he's like, in terms of of course he's my buddy, so I love him. He's such a great soul. But like in terms of art and music and the spirit of it all, I don't think I knew a more beautiful soul. He really, really believed in it all. And the reason why I mentioned the specifics about suicide and all this kind of stuff is, and I'm not trying, if anyone knew Bernie or worked with Bernie, I'm not trying to say everyone has their own experiences and whatever, but the things that I was reading a lot of stuff, there was a lot of stuff written about Bernie after personal comments, things were written, and it was very strange to read 2 things that I kept seeing that kind of really bothered me. And one was that he mismanaged his career and that he killed himself because he didn't make it in, he wasn't a big, giant, famous artist. And I can tell you, and anyone that knew Bernie, he was a very, very humble man and very down to earth. And that couldn't be further from the truth. It was his poverty, his illness. He said that he didn't have anything to look forward to health-wise. He took care of his father to the end for years and years. And when I met Bernie, his father was already wow, how is this man going to live? He lived for so long in such a terrible state. So I think Bernie didn't want that to be that kind of burden on his family. I wish he would have been that kind of burden. It'd be a way better burden than the survivors of suicide have to endure. But I just want to make that clear. He didn't kill himself for that reason. As far as mismanaging his career, knowing him his whole life, since 1993, like we've been together since then. Bernie at a certain point got tired of doing. I mean, if anyone knows Bernie's work, it's so detailed. There's so much fucking labor that goes into that. And even when he switched to computers, it drove me crazy. He had such infinite patience. He'd watch what's called a loading bar. What's that called? The progress bar. He'd just sit there and light up a cigarette and watch the thing. We're talking like early 90s. The thing would just move at like a millimeter an hour, and you just watch it. This is driving me crazy, Bernie. But he just had so much patience for that stuff. And at a certain point, the amount of work he did, he basically said, I either want to get paid, like he'd see a writer get paid like 100 times more, and he'd get $50 for a page, for a giant, and then the writer would get so much money. He's like, I'm either going to get paid, or I want that kind of artistic respect, like if I'm going to collaborate with someone, or I want to have that kind of artistic involvement. And a lot of times they didn't happen, or he didn't get paid properly, or he didn't feel. So he said no, and somehow that kind of turned into, Bernie's difficult, or he mismanaged his career, and that's it. I think just like anybody else, he had self-respect, and he wanted to, if I'm going to work hard, pay me appropriately, or at least let me have some creative control over this if he was collaborating and stuff. So I think we're all entitled to as artists to want those two things, and so he didn't want to be taken advantage of. So money or shared creativity, and I think that's a good thing. So I just want to challenge that, because that's what you see a lot of that written, and that's not the case for Bernie Miro. I'm making that clear. And I feel that Bernie did, like Valium, and like so many artists and people I see in this room, he did everything right that I think an artist could do or should do, which is basically he mastered his craft. He worked so hard. He became such a phenomenal artist. He worked really, really hard. That'd be the second thing, right? You can be great, but maybe you don't work enough. Bernie pumped it out. Going through all his stuff with his family over these months. I thought I saw it all. There were like piles and piles and piles of. If anybody wants to know, just on the side, we found his earliest version of the Jam. If anyone knows the Jam, like I said, he's a guy with no superpowers. The original Jam that he drew was like Batman. He was like super muscular, and he did like the Vulcan death pinch and all this incredible stuff. So it was really funny to see that. I guess I wonder what happened like in his mind, So that's it. Mastered his craft, worked really hard, and he really did promote himself. He really tried for years to promote himself. He was one of the first guys on social media trying to encourage me to get on that crap and doing all this kind of stuff. And that's it. So I'm not passing blame onto anyone, but those are like three things that I think, especially in a small community like the comics community and the marginalized art form in a lot of ways, I think the non-mainstream comics world is. It's not superheroes and stuff. If everyone here is an auteur doing their own work and all that kind of stuff. And I think that people should get some kind of in a utopia, I guess, an ideal world, people would be kind of rewarded for that. You do it all, I'll just kind of end it with let me just check my. I thought I was going to write it all out, but I just kind of did my best. It was too difficult. So I'm just going to come to an end here. So basically, I just thought he was just the best guy and a wonderful artist, a genius. And I'll just say these last things here, just nice words instead of all this negative stuff I'm saying. So enthusiastic, ever youthful, ever creative, imaginative, fun, optimistic, supportive, idealistic, as I said already, art-loving, brilliant, down-to-earth, honest, hardworking to the extreme, genuine, respectful, nature-loving, a real mensch, a real human being, a genius, and truly the best friend a guy can ever have. So what a loss, and let's all remember Bernie and try to remember his art and try to remember the man. And if you can, read his stuff and pass it on and keep mentioning his name over the years, that'd be a wonderful thing because he deserves it. So thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, Howard. That was incredibly touching, and I appreciate you sharing that with everyone. Moving along with things and continuing with the ceremony, our next award is the Nipper, the Doug Wright Award for Emerging Talent, sponsored by Koyama Provides and the Valley View Artist Retreat. This award given to an author or team early in their career and deserving of wider recognition and aimed in honor of Doug Wright's signature character. This year, a record 3 Nipper nominees are also nominated for the Best Book Award. The winner of the Nipper receives a trophy, a small cash prize, and a week at the Valley View Artist Retreat in Caledon, Ontario. Here to present the 2025 Nipper Award is the artist Deanna Tamblin, a longtime Doug Wright Awards volunteer and one of this year's Nipper judges. Welcome, Deanna.
Thank you, Jay. And yes, I'm happy to have been a member of the jury for this award with a couple other jury members. And we had, I think, between 40 and 45 submissions for this award, and it's a really strong category. We were limited to 5 nominees, and it was honestly really tough to do. It's an hours-long discussion process about figuring out who would be this year's nominees. And I wanted to follow up on the Bernie Moreau, what Howard talked about. I was a huge Bernie Moreau fan. And in terms of shining a spotlight on talent, and this category used to be called the Spotlight Award, I think that's something that Brad and Seth and the Doug Wright Awards is you're shining a spotlight on incredible talent in Canada. And I thought I knew what was happening in Canadian comics, and then looking at these awards, I thought, I don't know this person, I don't know this person, this is outstanding, this is amazing. There's a huge crop of young, talented cartoonists coming up, and we just have such a lot to be proud of. So thank you to the Doug Wright Awards for doing this and giving people a lift and inspiration and a spotlight. So having said that, we've got 5 nominees for the Nipper Award, which is for emerging talent. And those nominees are Boom for the Jellyfish, which was originally published in French, but the translated version is translated by Robin Lang and Helga Dasher, and it's published by Pow Pow Press. The next nominee is James Collier for Ballpark. And that is published by Wig Shop and More or Less Books. Next nominee is Rosanna Fung for Age 16. And that is published by Annick Press. Next up, we've got Frances V. Riley for The Harrowing Tales of La Calivo. And that's published by Dirty Water Comics. Finally, we have Sid Sharp for Bog Myrtle. And Bog Myrtle was also published by Annick Press. So I've got an envelope here. And the winner is Boom for the Jellyfish.
Oh, geez. Thank you. When I first got nominated for that prize, I thought it was a bit funny because in Quebec, I'm old news. I'm actually older than you think I am, and I'm old news. But The Jellyfish is the first time my book is as widely distributed in English. It's only my second official English translation. And so that's the first time that a lot of people get my work into their hands. And it wouldn't have been possible without Pow Pow, who also published a French version, by the way. So without Luc, I wouldn't be here. Without Chloé also, who's not here today. And without Francois, who's been working really hard at the English branch, for the English branch of Pow Pow Press. I'm stunned. I'm really happy. This book means a lot to me. It's my most personal book, even though I did autobio comics for like 10 years, because it's about becoming blind. Spoilers, sorry. It's about becoming blind, and I've had several eye diseases over time, and I eventually became blind in one eye. And so this was like my last-ditch effort to try to immortalize how it felt, just in case I lost the other eye too, which I haven't. It's fine. I'm still drawing. Everything's fine still for now. And yeah, thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here, and I love the dog rights. I love TCAF, and I hope I can come every year, even as a tourist.
All right, so we've come now to a very special time. It's time now to induct our second giant of the north of the evening, Richard Comley, the co-creator and original publisher of the iconic Canadian superhero, Captain Canuck, a character celebrating his 50th anniversary year. Following the ceremony, you can find 2 display cases in the bar featuring some ephemeral items related to both Captain Canuck and Loose Goose. Before we bring Richard up, I'd like to speak a little bit about Captain Canuck. I spoke earlier about Apache Chief, who I think was a pretty, fair to say, terrible representation of an Indigenous superhero. When we moved to Canada, and one of the only stores that was in the town of Maniwaki next to my reserve was Giant Tiger, which sold blind bags of comic books in English. So you'd go with like $5 and end up with a stack of comics, which for me was pretty awesome. And 2 of the books that my brother and I were able to get a hold of that were in English that were awesome were Scout by Tim Truman, featuring an Indigenous superhero in a post-apocalyptic world. And actually, maybe not everyone here is aware of this, but Captain Canuck. One of the first things I noticed in looking at the book, which as Conan pointed out was the first self-published comic in full color, was that Captain Canuck was a little dark skinned. I was like, yo, this brother looks like he could maybe be related to me. What's going on here? And sure enough, Captain Canuck in his original incarnation was actually of Cree heritage, which I know, for me was a huge revelation because up until that point, this is going to sound stupid because again, I'm not that old really. Tell that to my knees and back, but you know. The Captain Canuck thing, like at that point in time, the only time I'd seen Native people in the media were either in Westerns or as the boogeymen in Stephen King stories or as comic relief. So it was a real trip to me. And if I could ask for a favor right now, can I have every cartoonist, comic artist, creator raise their hands in here? Everyone? Thank you. Here's the thing. About 35 years after seeing Captain Canuck, I created a production company that created an animated series based on my comic book Kagagi the Raven, which aired in Canada, the United States, and Australia. We did 1 season of a 13-episode animated series. Kagagi is the first Indigenous superhero television series in history. If I can speak directly to every cartoonist, every comic creator in here, not just writers, artists, people in editing, people in publishing, this is the thing. Your work will spiral out. You have no idea the impact what you're doing can have on people who have never seen themselves represented in a heroic fashion. That's the real beauty and magic of what we are blessed enough to be able to do. So with that said, I think I'll wrap up my end. I'll wrap up my end of this, and here to induct Richard Comley, please welcome Ron Kasman, who has penciled, inked, and lettered Captain Canuck, and by coincidence, is one of this year's nominees for the Pigskin Peters Award.
Let's see. Hi, I am your grandfather, and I need glasses. Mighty oaks from tiny acorns grow, but only from acorns. Tomato seeds, grass seeds, begonia seeds just won't do it. I'm Ron Kasman. It's my good fortune to be here to talk about Richard Cumley and the creation and development of Captain Canuck.
Sorry, I can't hear you. There you go.
Okay, I just wasted all my good material. Mighty oaks from tiny acorns grow, but only from acorns. Tomato seeds, grass seeds, begonia seeds just won't do it. I'm Ron Kasman, and it's my good fortune to be here to talk about Richard Cumley and the creation and development of Captain Canuck. Can you name another comic book that first came out in 1975 and remains popular today? I can. Giant Size X-Men actually came out the same month as Richard's comic. Deathlock the Demolisher came out that year as well, but you probably never heard of that. At the time, almost every comic book available in Canada was produced in New York. It was similar for other art forms, but things were starting to change. In 1975, Pride for Canada was on the rise. Our centennial was only 8 years before. Expo 67 had morphed into Man and His World. We had a new flag, Medicare for All, a Major League Baseball team, and a prime minister who made his name kissing high school girls on camera while wearing a rose in his lapel. He would create the Charter of Rights and tell us that the government had no business in the bedrooms of the nation. He broadened bilingualism. Multiculturalism opened Canada to the world. But what about Canadian comic books? Comic stores were rare and comic conventions were infrequent. The big companies wanted their contributors to live in New York, and that wasn't easy for Canadians. In May of 1975, a friend phoned me who had just purchased Captain Canuck #1 in a variety store. It was being sold alongside comics from Marvel, DC, Charlton, Gold Key, and Warren. My friend was understandably critical of the comic. Canuck was an antiquated term. I had never heard it used in conversation. The character resembled Captain America a little bit too much. The comic was printed in full color, costly, but not used to its full potential. The lettering was too big, the dialogue was weak, the drawing was amateurish. The character had the strength of 2 men. So ostensibly, you just had to get 3 guys to beat him up. It contained panels copied from recent comics. Richard, have you left yet? The storytelling was muddled. The hero was just too Canadian. You read it. He fought polar bears, drove a dog sled, and his life was saved by an Inuit. And he commented to a sidekick, God was helping us. Dialogue not seen in a word balloon outside of Spire Comics. I was a young amateur cartoonist at the time. Most cartoonists were trying to create work that held great meaning. We emulated science fiction, fantasy, pulp, and counterculture writers. We emulated the popular talents of the day. Neil Adams, Jim Steranko, Barry Smith, Wally Wood, Bernie Wrightson, and Jeff Jones. Captain Canuck stylistic influences were unidentifiable, buried under weak construction and rough line work. Then why did my friend at the newsstand, why didn't he just ignore the comic? Why did he buy it? Why did he call me? Well, he also understood that Richard Cumley knew things we didn't know and did things we couldn't do. Most obviously, Richard drew a 17-page lead story and a 10-page backup, while I and most of my peers were having trouble finishing 2 pages of continuity. And Richard got the second story inked by Owen McCarran, a full-blown professional who would be working for Marvel within a year. The comic was a myriad of curiosities. Slick paper when everyone else was using newsprint, color photographs as backgrounds, a stunning logo that would endure for 50 years, ads for X-ray specs and bodybuilding devices, a Captain Canuck Comics Club with a t-shirt, a crest, a membership card, and a discount on subscriptions. There was a public service comic within called Captain Canuck in Peer Group Pressure. There were art lessons and a feature on getting to know Captain Canuck and his creators. Most importantly, Richard put together a serious work of art, completely unlike Wright and Jones and the other emulated creators of the day. Captain Canuck reflected nationalism, a personal philosophy, and spiritual belief. As time went by, Richard became a far better artist and writer, and also showed good judgment in his business affairs. He's produced the comic now for a full 50 years. This involved finding financial backing, enlisting distributors, working with others to tell the story, and placing the character in related media. Richard has taken the character through a 50-year journey, and the character has also taken Richard through a 50-year journey. Richard's imagination has taken the captain to fantastic places, and the captain has taken Richard to places that he himself would never have seen, like this gathering. Richard and his alter ego have been honored in many ways. Captain Canuck has been published as individual issues and in compilations, been produced as a web series, and has been developed for film and television, both live action and animation. It outsold all other comic book titles in Canada the year it began, 170,000 copies just that year. Time magazine gave it 2 pages about the time it came out. Time also put the character on its cover years later for a cover story on Canada as an exporting powerhouse. In 1995, as part of the superhero series of postage stamps, it became the best-selling Canadian stamp of all time. The Canadian Mint issued a silver coin honoring Captain Canuck in the shape of a comic book. They said, and listen to this, "It personifies the spirit of Canadians by embodying self-sacrifice, determination, and integrity, and all with a full dose of humility and compassion." Richard's Donald Trump cover recently made the news throughout Canada and the USA. And it was mentioned at the start that I've actually drawn Captain Canuck, inked Captain Canuck, lettered Captain Canuck. Most people just don't know that, and I had no intention of saying it. But my friends were calling me saying, "Have you heard of this character, Captain Canuck?" And I would say, "Heard of it, I used to draw it." And then they'd tell me about this cover. I'd say, "No, I know, I was sitting with him at the convention when he was selling it." Yeah, okay. But Richard is still on top of things 50 years later with very, very relevant contributions. And my guess is Richard's going to tell you a bit about that cover himself, so I'm not going to. Richard, you're stuck now. You got to talk about it. I'm very happy that Richard now has also become a member of the Giants of the North, the Canadian Cartooning Hall of Fame. And can we hear some applause for you? Right there. And
Thank you, everybody. I met Ron that same year, 1975. He was hitchhiking to Western Canada, and he came to stay with me for about 3 days. I just met him. He phoned me out of the blue, and I knew right away he was a good guy, so I wasn't afraid to have him stay with us. I appreciate this recognition. I want to. There's a lot of people I could thank. Fatty Akim's in the room. I'll thank him in front of everyone. Well, yeah, there he is. So, you know, I started Captain Huck in 1975, but it hasn't been a consistent, smooth running magazine. There was a lot of starts and stops. As many of you know, you know, it's not an easy business to be in. And I did other things besides comic books. I did children's books and greeting cards and advertising and storyboarding and all kinds of stuff like that too. I have 8 children, and I couldn't just wait for the next break in comic books business to provide. So it is a tough business. I think most of you who work in the industry realize that, and it's not getting easier. And but hey, we've made it. We made it this far. The you know we feel like we're on the verge, and I speak as Fatty and I together here of a lot of great things happening in the future. Um, you know, even next year there'll be stuff coming out that could have come out sooner, possibly, but it's time and money that just doesn't make that possible. So thank you, everybody. I really appreciate this.
Thank you and congratulations, Richard. Before we move along, really quickly, if you'll indulge me, I'd like to thank everyone for bearing with me as I've attempted to overcome my obviously crippling shyness. Um, I like to think I'm pretty good at talking. Um, I like to think I'm pretty good at an interview. And after my first collaboration with Robert Munch, Black Lies came out, the second one came out called Bear for Breakfast. And I'd like to share a little story of an interview I did that was maybe not so good here in Toronto on the media tour for Bear for Breakfast. I did, I believe, 7 or 8 interviews that day. The last one was with a kids-related magazine, and everything was going swimmingly until we got to the end of the interview. And so the book is called Bear for Breakfast, and the journalist, who I'm sure meant well, asked me, "So Jay, have you ever eaten bear for breakfast?" And I said, "Well, not for breakfast." And she said, "Oh, really?" Which was kind of a very strange reaction. She was very grossed out by this. And I was joined by some people from a publishing house and from Apple who were with me at the time. And the PR guy from Apple kind of looked at me and was like, "Let's, and I said, just wait a second." I said, and me being the idiot I am, I said, "That's not the weirdest thing I've eaten." To this day, I'm not sure why that was the response I went with, but I was feeling kind of defensive and triggered, And I was like, well, look, I come from a place where we still rely on a lot of wild game, so we still live off the land. And she said, as any good journalist would do, "What's the weirdest thing you've eaten, Jay?" And I said, "Well, probably turtle. Did you know that they say in turtle, different parts of different meat, different parts of the body have different flavors? So they say there's 7 different flavors of meat." And she's looking at me like I'm from friggin' Mars. And I go, "Yes, they say that one part tastes like fish, one part tastes like frog legs, one part tastes like chicken." I had an uncle who was a foreman of a labor crew. And what he would do is take the parts that they say taste like chicken, he would deep fry it, and he would bring them into his work crew in a KFC bucket. and say, hey, you guys did a good job this week. Here's a special treat. I brought you a bucket of KFC. They'd get about halfway done eating this. He'd let them know they were actually eating turtle, and then he'd laugh at them because that's the res, and we like to laugh at each other. And this journalist was completely grotesque. It was like, oh my God. At this point, the people who were there, like the PR people, were like, okay, Jay, we really got to go. Look at the time. And I said, one more thing real quick. And with every fiber of my being, I summed up every bit of sincerity I have in my body. And I said, there's actually something really convenient about eating turtle. And the journalist looked at me and said, really? What's that? She bought hook, line, and sinker. Really, what's that? And I said, it comes in its own bowl. So sometimes we have these culture clashes where things don't always go the way you want. But yeah, thank you for bearing with me. I think we've all had a pretty good time. You've made me feel really welcome, and I appreciate that very much. With that said, it is now time for the evening's final award, the Doug Wright Award for Best Book, sponsored by the Beguiling. This award is given to the best book of any kind published by a Canadian creator or team during the 2024 calendar year. The best book winner receives a trophy and a small cash prize. Here to present the 2025 Best Book Award is last year's Best Book winner, Kate Beaton.
Hi there. I'm gonna go on my tippy toes because the camera feed shows short people like very. So this is for the people in the overflow room. Thank you. Yes, I won this award a couple of years ago, the best book, and I'm glad to have the chance to say thank you in person because the year that I did get it, Peggy Burns came up for me. I wasn't able to come. So thank you very much for that. Being part of the Canadian comics community, and I mean the talent that you get to be in the room with is one of the great joys of my life. So thank you. And speaking of talent, the nominees for the 2025 Best Book Award, the Doug Wrights, are The Jellyfish by Boom. Okay. Translated by Robin Lang and Helga Dasher, published by Pow Pow Press. Age 16 by Rosina Fung, published by Anna Press. The Field by Dave Lapp, published by Conundrum. The Wendy Award by Walter Scott, published by Brown and Quarterly. Bog Myrtle by Sid Sharp, published by Brown and Quarterly, published by Anna Press. Forgive me. I'm So Glad We Had This Time Together by Maurice Delicate, published by Random House Canada. And the winner. The winner is I'm So Glad We Had This Time Together by Maurice Delicate, published by Random House Canada. Oh my goodness, congratulations.
Thank you very much. I'm very touched by this. I have a short few comments to make. When I began working on my book in 2012, it was an optimistic world. President Obama was in the White House. Gay marriage had been legal across Canada since 2005. The Western world, at least, seemed to be moving forward on progressive issues. I thought that my story of a cis, white, gay man's struggle for self-acceptance against some stiff odds would be meaningful, but not necessarily of any vital social importance. Cut to today. Under the Trump presidency, liberal values are under blistering attack. In the US, alongside the crippling of institutions of higher learning, we're seeing more book bans, more institutionalized misogyny, and more stripping away of human rights for immigrants, people of color,
and queer and trans people. Here in Canada, Premier Danielle Smith has introduced some of the harshest anti-trans legislation our country has seen to date. It's a depressing time in which the advances for gay and trans rights made by so many groundbreaking activists, past and present, are in peril. Suddenly, my story seems to contain an urgent message, because the world that these extreme conservatives want to return us to is the world I describe in my memoir. Growing up in a strictly religious sect, I got zero sex education. I internalized the church's intolerant view of homosexuality, leading to years of shame and guilt, depression and loneliness. I was estranged from my mother, who could not accept my sexuality. My book illustrates the effects of all of this ignorance. I often think of this scene from Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, when the ghost of Christmas Present introduces the two gaunt children at his feet. This boy is ignorance, this girl is want. Beware them both, but most of all beware this boy, for on his brow I see that written which is doom, unless the writing be erased. Comics, stories, books, they are such powerful weapons. They can save us. No wonder the forces of ignorance fear them so much and seek to suppress them. Please let us keep creating, celebrating, and defending our books. Thank you to Chip Kidd, my editor at Pantheon, all the folks at Random House Canada, the folks at Reactor who so tirelessly helped me over the years. Some of them are here tonight, Bill Grigsby and Steve Dunk. Thank you so much. And to my partner of 23 years, Gordon Bonas. And to the many other incredibly talented finalists for your thoughtfulness, curiosity, and passion. Bravi a tutti.
So congratulations, Maurice, and congratulations to all of our winners. That concludes the awards for the night. Thank you all for coming. Before we get out of here, I'm sure at this point, a lot of people here are ready to have a beer and relax. I could certainly use a cigarette at this point. So before we get out of here, just one last thing I'd like to say really, really quickly, if you'll indulge me one more time. Comics are important because at the end of the day, comics are a thing that you can do if you can draw and you can write and you have passion. As a guy who has sat at the forefront of, as a guy who has sat at the, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. As a guy who has sat at the forefront of a television series and knows how many building blocks and stumbling blocks there can be in getting a message out there using that medium, I know that comics are a way for us to do these things, spread our message, and share what's in our hearts in a way that's doable for everybody. And as Maurice was saying, we are living in a time where I think it is becoming more and more important that we take on the fight, we take on the challenge of promoting diversity, promoting inclusion, promoting a better tomorrow, in which the things that happened in the past can no longer happen again. That's the way to a better tomorrow. And I think, if we're being honest, it's people like the people in this room who will be at the forefront of that, the comic creators, the people who care, the people who have big hearts. Those people, you people, are, in fact, the rebels. Long live the outlaws. Long live the rebels. Long live the punks. Long live comics. Thank you. Enjoy your night.